What are they going to tell us in Las Vegas this week? What is the future of the TPU program?
So what we're reporting is they're probably going to announce an inference chip, for running AI models after they've been trained. Thus far, they've been doing training and inference in one chip. We are expecting and reporting that they're probably going to announce something separate just for inference. Google chief scientist Jeff Dean told me in an interview, look, the way inference demand is growing, quote, it now becomes sensible to specialize chips more for training and more for inference workloads, and that they're looking at a bunch of things. Their chip chief, Vidot, declined to tell me specifically whether they're going to announce that this week, but said we'd be hearing more soon. And this continues sort of a trend. NVIDIA announced a fast inference chip from what they'd acquired from Grok. You mentioned before the Cerebras IPO. That's also at this point really a low latency fast inference play.
Meanwhile, the play has been extraordinary with TPUs, and the adoption by many would call even rivals, Meta likely wanting in on the Google-made chips. So how are they broadening, and where do you think they're going to be getting supply from more broadly? There's a lot of reporting in the market, for example, that maybe they turn to Marvell versus Broadcom. I know you can't comment on that directly, but how are they thinking about their own supply chain?
Look, I think for them, supply is a problem. I was talking to Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis, and he mentioned that as well. Look, you have Meta, which signed, they told us, a multi-billion, multi-year deal to use TPUs. They're just getting their first big tranche of them. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with them. Anthropic has a huge deal. Citadel is going to talk about how they're using TPUs at the Google Next conference this week. And what Demis was telling me was that, contrary to what Jensen Huang said last week on the Dwarkesh Patel podcast, that it's really just Anthropic that wants them. They actually have a lot of people that are interested. They don't have enough supply. Demis was saying to me, look, what they end up doing is prioritizing the top of the line frontier lab customers, because those are the customers who are most capable of taking advantage of what TPU has to offer. More broadly, I think the TPU play, and this is why it appeals to these big frontier labs, is that Google is the only, maker of a large top-of-the-line frontier model, one of the top, models that also makes, AI accelerator chips in large volume. OpenAI has said they will as well.
I think that's why it's worth lingering for a minute on why the TPU is useful. So you explained really well that to this point, the TPU tensor processing unit has basically been a general purpose accelerator, training or inference. But when you put it side by side, as many people try to do against NVIDIA's latest GPU or other inference-specific chips, what is it about Google owning the architecture, about designing it for specifically the inference use case that makes it better? Is it money? Is it power? What do we need to know?
What Google's argument is that it is the fact that they know what you need for training and running a top-of-the-line model. There are, two things in the last couple of months that have really increased the interest in Google TPU. One is the Anthropic deal, which was a validation of the technology. The other was sort of the release of the latest version of Gemini, which was trained and is running its inference on Google TPU, and the strong reviews that it's gotten. Google uses data and requests and information from their own AI model teams to figure out what they need to prioritize and, frankly, what they need to fix in the chip business. They work together to figure out that, for example, Google TPU wasn't doing, utilization was too low on those chips when you were using it for reinforcement learning. Demis was telling me they're using it to figure out, how precise the chips have to be as opposed to where they can save money. And that's sort of a set of data that flows into the Google TPU design team that other chip makers don't necessarily have. NVIDIA does have a very, solid model team. But, among the big three, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, for frontier models, Google is the only one making AI accelerator chips at volume right now.